Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. This time, Contagion. Yeah, it's catching. Yep, I used that joke. Yes, I did. Speaking of catching, spread the disease. Spread a good disease for once in this year, in this time, in this era. Go to patreon.com/IBD. Donate. Help us out. Then spread the word to your friends. You know what? Spread the word to your friends about our show. Do you know we have a Facebook page? We do. Go there. Share stuff. Meet up with fans. Tell us how wrong we are. You could also tell us how right we are. Tell us how right and wrong we are. Do it. Check us out on Facebook. It's All Been Trekked Before. We're there. And we're right here. Contagion. It's All Been Trekked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. The usual crew is here.
This is Steven.
And the usual Keith.
And Jimmy-Jerome. We're here to talk Contagion, which is, as Keith commented on Facebook earlier today, funny because we're still in the middle of a contagion of our own.
Yeah, I was as trepidatious as Keith going into this, that it was going to be too close to home.
I was ready to embrace it, actually, but I was disappointed in that regard, but I think we still got something interesting.
Well, let's do first impressions then.
I started off thinking I was not going to dig this episode, but it brought me around. I ended up digging it. I ended up liking it. I thought for a while, I was just like, okay, it felt like it was going to be a Ghost in the Machine kind of episode. And then I thought it got more interesting. Not only that aspect, but I thought all the other elements kind of came together. It was a good, fun episode.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot that was going on that I liked. There were things that I like to see in Star Trek, or science fiction in general, and Star Trek in particular, when we get into these kinds of stories. So that's that.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it well enough. It certainly wasn't one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I don't think it's an award winner, but it was. Yeah. There
were a few things that I thought stretched my belief, and everything wasn't quite on board for. But yeah, it wasn't bad.
As I say, yeah, they took some shortcuts in this episode, but they did literally take some shortcuts.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to defend one way or the other, though. I guess it didn't bother me that much, but it seemed integral to the story, at least.
So we start out with Picard has yet another old friend. It's starting to be like
I wrote that down.
That other old friend he needs to help on the USS Yamato.
So all captains know all other starship captains, right? It's like a fraternity.
Well, obviously, there's the annual captains conference.
Is there really, though? I have no idea. I mean,
no, I don't think so.
Okay. I mean, it seems like something that could be true, but...
Yeah. Like, I guess if you're a quarterback in the NFL, it's kind of a quote-unquote fraternity. Or I guess there's certain things, if you do it, you're part of a fraternity. I guess that doesn't mean you hang out, though. But
yeah.
There's a novel miniseries back in the 90s. They used to do all the Star Trek novel tie-ins where they tie... They do big events where they tie all the different series together in a novel somehow. And they did the Captain's Table novels. There were 6 of them, I think. I want to say it's Pike, Sulu, Kirk, Picard, Sisko, Janeway.
Okay.
And basically it was a bar outside of time and space called the Captain's Table. And only captains could enter it. And then when you entered, you had to give a story. That was how you paid for your drinks.
Sure.
And so each captain had their own novel where they gave a story of being a captain.
Huh. I like that as a device for sure.
It was a little bit more believable, I felt, than their invasion series where the same alien race invaded 4 times and just happened to be confronted by each of the 4, Kirk, Picard, Janeway, and Sisko.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't know. I don't really see what would be incredible about what happened in this episode, or in the sense of Picard happening to know this other captain. He said the Yamato was their sister ship or something.
Yeah, that's true. That's true too.
It's not this one captain knowing Picard alone. It's the fact that we've gone through a lot of captains and admirals and such that know Picard. And while he's the captain of the flagship, so I'm sure he's networked a fair amount, it feels like where Kirk knew every captain ever, it's starting to feel like that with Picard too.
Maybe.
This particular captain was Captain Donald Varley, or Varley, played by Thalmus Rashulala. I'm probably saying that wrong.
It's a great name. And I immediately thought he was a Seinfeld guy, but I was thinking of a different guy. But then I remembered him. He was on the SNL with Richard Pryor where they did The Exorcist. He was actually the Exorcist in the episode.
Oh,
and,
wow.
He was on Sanford and Son, among other huge guest spots he did. And then he was in Blackula. among other films he did. So he died way too young, 51. He died like 2 days after Red Fox.
Or he died like 2 years after this episode.
Yeah.
So wait, what was he? Was he hosting SNL?
He was just this was like one of the first 5 episodes, so he was just a featured player.
Okay.
So they brought him in for that, and I don't know if you remember that sketch, but essentially
I remember of it. I mean,
yeah. So he's the Exorcist guy, and he's got all the straight lines, and then eventually he's like, "I'm getting out of here," while Richard Pryor's doing all the funny lines, obviously.
Yeah, he was only in that one Saturday Night Live sketch.
Yeah,
according to IMDb.
But
he was also in Roots with LeVar Burton.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Aha! So that's how we got the job.
Amoro. He was in part 1 of Roots, and at the time he did this episode, he was playing Captain Bolts on Dragnet, the television series.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I thought he did fine. I don't have any complaints or glowing compliments. I just thought he did fine.
Yeah, and I like the device of him. Speaking of devices, him going through his personal logs and all that. I thought those are pretty cool, and especially when it ends up being the thing that screwed the Enterprise more or less, is them bringing in that log. Yeah,
that part of the episode I bought.
Yeah, because for a while I was like, "What is?" Like I said, I thought it was, is this some Ghost in the Machine? We've done this before. And then I was like, "Nope, that's a much more interesting." And I have some more thoughts and questions on that. But as far as because computers and whatever, I don't understand them. But yeah, so I thought that part was cool. So yeah, I liked him. R.I.P.
Picard has a conversation with him, and then he's on the bridge, and there's a really interesting handheld shot, a camera moving around the bridge, which it's not something that we see a lot of in this episode. In this series.
Yeah, is that the one where he's kind of like up by the helmsman station, then kind of he's walking back towards?
Yeah,
I noted that too. I thought it was kind of cool. I was trying to think of another time we'd seen it, and I couldn't think of one.
This was directed by Joseph Scanlon, and this was the 3rd of 4 episodes of The Next Generation he directed. He directed Skin of Evil, and I was trying to think, were there some of those shots in Skin of Evil? There might have been. I can't remember. But I remember commenting on the directing of Skin of Evil and how they found so many different perspectives behind the oil slick. He also directed The Big Goodbye, and then he'll be directing Times Squared coming up, and that'll be his last next-gen directing job. But they repeated the handheld thing down in the Iconian base as well. So there were 2 scenes in this episode that were like that. I don't know.
I didn't catch it. I remember there being something that I wanted to remark upon like that, a unique looking shot in one of the other couple of episodes. I just kind of skipped it. It didn't really seem that important at the time for the note, but there was the shot of I think the captain and Wesley, or might have been Geordi, just something down in engineering where it looked like they were kind of looking through like somebody was behind the panel or something.
Oh yeah, when they were
in the corner of the room.
Was that the light creatures? Was that episode?
Could have been.
I don't know. I would like to mention this episode was written by Steve Gerber and Beth Woods. Beth Woods has only 2 writing credits, this and an episode of Captain Simeon and the Space Monkeys from 1996.
Wow.
Steve Gerber is best known for being the creator of Howard the Duck.
Wow.
So he's got a writing credit on the movie Howard the Duck and the Guardians of the Galaxy movies just because he created Howard the Duck.
Okay, so not the movie.
Interesting.
He also wrote some animated television. He's got some credits for episodes of G.I. Joe, Thundar the Barbarian, Mr. T, the new Batman Adventures. So he's got a few credits, but I thought that I don't see Howard the Duck in this episode at all. So that didn't translate over.
So
sorry?
He was Iconian.
The episode
I was talking about. He died at age 60, so he didn't live all that long either.
The episode I was talking about was the Dauphin.
To go back to your thing, Jimmy, about the that handheld thing. The other thing I liked aesthetically or cinematically this episode was the flickering light kind of thing, the going on and off, kind of the where the computer, the lights would be on for a little while, they'd be different levels. I thought that just gave it a different look, and I thought I like that a lot too.
I thought they overdid it, honestly.
Yeah.
I liked it, but I got tired of it, and it was too regular on and off in my opinion.
It wasn't. I could see that, but I liked it nonetheless.
It was, the idea of it was good. It did something a little bit more. I want to use the word visceral, but not quite that powerful. I mean, it's just something you could kind of feel and understand immediately as you're seeing it happen, and you think that something is really wrong, that kind of thing, you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
So Picard's talking to his friend Captain Donald, and he gives him a pickup line like, "What's a nice captain like you doing?" I was just like, okay, that seems weird. I don't know if that's an inside joke between the two of them, but it felt off to me.
Well, if it were, they wouldn't explain it to us, so that's realistic.
I did wonder, you mentioned Yamato as a sister ship. It is a Galaxy-class vessel, the same as the Enterprise D, and it does have a crew complement of just over 1,000 people, the same as the Enterprise, but their bridge is so much smaller. Do you notice that?
I didn't catch it.
So, like, the security panel that's behind Picard is, like, way up above his head, and it's broad and sweeping, and on the Yamato, it was, like, small and right behind Captain Varley. And so I mean, the color scheme, I like that there was a slightly different color scheme, and it looked a little more worn, whereas the Enterprise is the flagship. So it did feel like that was kind of an older model of the Galaxy class.
Makes sense.
But the bridge just felt a lot smaller, which doesn't make sense to me if it's the same size ship and the same crew complement and everything. I did want to know why they treated the whole situation the way they did. Like, why couldn't they just try to tow the ship out while they fixed it? Or why they never discuss a saucer separation? Or, I mean, obviously a saucer separation wouldn't have worked from what we had known, but at the time, it felt like, why weren't they doing something to get most of those people out of the neutral zone? Well, why were they just sitting there? Because
I get later, they're like, well, we don't want to get infected or whatever. But yeah, before then, that's a good question.
Well, I mean, it's possible that the Captain Donald, I can't remember what his name is right now, but
Varley.
Varley.
Yeah.
Well, we saw that it was more like a Ahab kind of thing. I don't think he would have wanted to leave under any circumstances, and he probably would deflect the conversation away from it.
Well,
his thing was, we have to stay here to beat the Romulans or whatever.
Yeah.
I didn't feel any particular loyalty to a ship. I felt he wanted to protect that planet, but he was already quite a ways away from that planet because it took the Enterprise a while to get there.
I think to your point, Keith, I did keep thinking, there's something wrong with him. He's crazy. But it turned out there wasn't.
Yeah, it felt like that to me too.
Yeah.
If the Federation isn't supposed to be flying in the neutral zone, shouldn't the Romulans not be flying in the neutral zone either?
Right.
All right. Well, that was one of my points I was going to ask about. I said I'm sorry. I'm confused about the concept of the neutral zone now. I mean, so is there just this region of empty space where no one is allowed to go into it at all, or shouldn't they all just be able to kind of like hang out there sometimes and talk?
I wrote down when she said we're defending the neutral zone. I wrote down, wait a minute, what? It's neutral. You don't own it. So it's supposed to be like, I guess the literal parallel I think about is the 38th parallel dividing North and South Korea, and there's that demilitarized zone or whatever. And I think of that, but it's obviously on a galactic level. But so I get the Romulans, and I think Picard even says, "What are you talking about? What are you doing here?" kind of a thing. And so I had the same reaction, Keith, and then I just decided, you know what, the Romulans are just being unreasonable.
Yeah.
Well, the Klingons do the same thing. Like when there's a Klingon neutral zone, they're always in it, and then they get mad when the Federation comes in it. I'm like, what's going on?
And I guess
you can both be out of it, or you can both go in it.
Yeah, and I guess that thing where we're all, even here again, like my example, it's like, well, we didn't go until they went in. No, we went in after they went in, kind of stuff. But but it's still, I wrote that down too, Keith. I had that same confusion.
Now you know what the most famous planet in the neutral zone is, don't you?
Iconia?
No, Nimbus 3, the planet of galactic peace. Which was in the neutral zone between the Klingons, the Romulans, and the Federation, and that's where they were all going to gather to make peace in the galaxy. We're going to find out a lot about that here in Star Trek V, The Final Frontier.
I got to tell you, it took till about 35 minutes into the episode for me to feel definitively that it was Iconia and not possibly Arconia.
I had to turn on captions during one of the conversations. I was just like, all right, what is this?
And I did double check afterwards, but I was like, okay, is it? Okay, it is. Okay, I'm going with Iconia. If I had a gun to my head for some strange reason. But yeah.
You're in the neutral zone.
Yeah, exactly. While we're talking about Romulans or whatever, and this, I don't know, maybe we did talk about this so far on TNG, but Are the shields better now on the new ships? Because we never see people get tossed about the bridge the way we used
the shields
to.
are better.
Okay. All right. And that makes sense.
Or the stabilizers or whatever it would be called.
They have better shock absorbers, so they absorb it all. Or maybe on decks below, people are just getting thrown through walls. But on the bridge, everybody's just getting bounced around just a little bit.
Well, one of my later notes is about what happened to Jordan in the turbo lift. That leads me to a couple of points. Yeah, first of all, I liked the look of being able to see the turbo lift go sideways, and just the idea of how dangerous it would be to be in something like that if the ship were just randomly doing things. Mm-hmm. But his sprint about don't destroy the probe, don't let it get here. It seemed to me that the genie was already out of the bottle. I mean, it seems like they were infected already by whatever. So what was the probe going to do? And I wish they would have explored that.
Yeah, I mean, it was still I agree. I thought it was one of the cooler scenes in the episode when he's getting tossed about. And you're right, they made some interesting choices there to punch up that scene.
But I mean, the probe itself, just scientifically, as we're going through the tech of what was going on. So apparently the ship got infected when they started listening to the logs from the other ship. What was the probe going to do additionally? Was it going to accelerate it somehow, or it just didn't make sense? I mean, I thought maybe it was going to turn out that probe was what was allowing those different gateway jumps.
They did explain it, and I feel like you might be saying the right thing, but Jimmy.
They explained it by the fact that it was isolated in the log section of the computer, and it was trying to break into other parts of the Enterprise's computer. Whereas the Yamato, it was basically in their main computer,
and that's what would have happened
to infect the Enterprise.
So if the probe, if that probe had got there, that's what would have happened.
Yeah, it would have got to their main computer faster and destroyed the ship a lot quicker.
All right, I'll accept that, I guess. Just yeah.
I'll accept that. I don't know what the point of the probe loading that program was. Like, it wouldn't make sense to have a defense program that doesn't pay attention to what it's infecting or whatever. And it seems like
they were saying it wasn't really defense.
Like a repair. I don't know.
Well, they were saying that. At least Picard was making the point when they were down on the planet that they were making an assumption about the intent of whatever the probe was. They kind of left it sort of up in the air, but it seemed like it was mostly like a protocol thing. Like maybe it was like a greeting device or some sort of exploration tool.
And Picard made a point, I think, sometime in this episode about how they wouldn't know because the civilization's so ancient, so there was really no way to figure out their motivations.
Right.
Which is not what I would think an archaeologist would want to do and would want to say, because aren't they trying to figure all that stuff out? And Picard is apparently an amateur archaeologist. I'm pretty sure that personality trait comes back in later episodes, but I realized this was the first time in the Next Generation where they're like, yeah, he's into archaeology. Okay. I like that he's into archaeology. I don't have a ton more to say about it other than, of course, he's going to beam down if he's into archaeology and nobody else is. Although, shouldn't there be a ship's archaeologist that could beam down with them?
Yeah, that would make sense. Didn't we've had archaeologists before, right? Wasn't I thought Khan's wife was an archaeologist.
I thought she was a historian.
I guess that would be kind of splitting hairs in a certain way, but for the purpose of an episode. But yeah, certainly different focuses at least.
Yeah, I mean, we also had already met the Enterprise D's historian. Was that Galen that went into the big goodbye with Picard?
Yeah.
So the other thing that makes sense to me, the fact that they even went to the Iconia in the first place, because I'm sorry. I just looked up Khan's wife, Marla McGivers, and she was the ship's historian. But anyway.
Okay.
So Picard's like, well, we need to stay in place until the ship is fixed. And then he's like, oh, wait, let's go to Iconia. It's like, okay, so did you need to stay in place? What? Why? What was the purpose of staying in place if you decided not to stay in place? I thought the episode was very uneven on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like I said, I think they took some shortcuts, played fast and loose, which in a different episode would have bothered me more. But yeah, those were definitely some. Okay, I'm gonna ignore that just so we can move on here. But yeah.
I also wrote down the Enterprise needs much better anti-malware scanning technology.
Perhaps, yeah.
They go warp factor 8 to Iconia. I noted that.
I noticed that as well.
Damn it.
I feel like that's all they do now. That's their cruising speed now. And that got me to another thing. Was like, well, why don't you just make 10 higher instead of going to 11? But I just decided in my head, it was like, well, the Enterprise, the original series Enterprise to go warp 8 was like, oh man, are you crazy? But now it's like, warp 8, but why change the scale? Warp 8's still warp 8.
They did actually change the scale between the original and the next gen.
Okay.
Oh, I wondered
Warp 8 in the next gen is not the same as Warp 8 in the original.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
Although I think the next gen is a lot faster, obviously.
Sure.
I
They have better shocks on the ship.
I think that leaving the scale the same would have been good to, we're in the future. This is further in the future, and they've got this cracked now.
We go warp 15 all the time now.
Yeah, something. But
I thought the scene where Wesley went to Picard for comfort felt very odd.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there was something there that was a little off, and since you say it, it just...
He never goes to Picard. He always goes to somebody else. And it just felt like in the middle of a crisis when Picard's busy for an acting ensign to presume to go into the captain's office just to be like, hey, I'm scared. Aren't you scared? Or, death sucks, right? Don't you agree? It just, I feel like he should have gone to Riker or somebody.
I almost feel like, and I'm pulling back the curtain a little bit, this episode, the next episode we're going to watch, and maybe actually going back a few, that it feels like they're like, all right, we're going to have Picard talk and have some good moments with everybody, which I think is a good thing. And maybe that one was a little forced, though.
That one felt forced.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. We want to develop those relationships. Pulaski, did it feel like they just needed to have her in one scene? Just for credit?
Yeah. I'm going to tip my hand about something else. She's my annoying person for the episode. And I feel bad because she had three like 3 lines, but they were all just these big declarative pronouncements. And then she's got, and I was just like, I hope she does more in this. Nope. I don't think she ever came back. So anyway, yeah, I'm with you. That was definitely forced in there too.
I didn't find it annoying. I mean, I laughed that she was, scolding her staff about what a splint was. It just, although I feel like that should have been basic first aid training. Yeah. If you're on a away team and you don't have all the stuff you need.
I was rolling my eyes like her staff. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I didn't like it. Though.
That doctor seemed very unprepared to be a doctor. But the scene felt weird, and for not a lead. And first of all, they let leads sit out episodes all the time in this series. Right. Just to force your guest star in a scene just seemed like an odd choice to me. Special guest star.
I think I'm jumping ahead to the Romulan part, but sorry, I think Picard says this even before the Romulans. Time is something we don't have in abundance, and I thought he was going to do speaking of Khan, I thought he was going to do the line from Wrath of Khan. Time is a luxury you don't have, Admiral. But I thought it definitely echoed that.
So I thought Geordi had a particularly good episode because besides the turbolift scene, which was great, the scene where he was being shocked and then Data threw him, first of all, was kind of humorous since he was okay, but I loved that they continued it with the dialogue where he's on the floor like, what happened? Data talks to him and he's just like, oh, okay. That amused the heck out of me.
That was a funny
Geordi.
That was a funny moment.
I thought it was a good use of him overall too. It's nice to have these kinds of episodes where you get into the different specialties of the characters and to see what they can do, and you get to some insight into how competent he is at his job.
Mm-hmm. What wasn't funny to me was when Troy's like, oh, another time, another place, this could be funny. And then Riker's like, find me some rocks in case I have to throw them at the Romulans.
I actually laughed at that. I don't know why you cut me off guard. I just went, huh?
Yeah. I bought Riker's line a little bit more because, he's under a lot of pressure and he says weird stuff sometimes. But Troy's thing, it's like, dude, you can read his mind. He's not in the mood for that type of humor right now. So then another part that bothered me is the probe goes to scan the Romulan ship, and Riker doesn't say, quick, shoot your phasers at it. He goes, hey, prepare to fire the phasers. And then they're like, why? And, it felt like he was taking too long to get to it. And, why would he tell him to prepare to fire? Why wouldn't he just say, quick, destroy that thing?
Yeah, and I can't remember if it was that or something else where he, instead of just saying do it, he decided to be use all of his vocabulary to say something that took 2 words while he was also saying we need to do this quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was weird.
Data over-explains things again when he's trying to talk about how he figured out the language. I'm tired of that. I don't need to see it. I feel like he's been told not to do it enough by the crew. They keep shutting him down. I think he'd adapt by now. especially in situations where time is of the essence.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mentioned before Picard and the archaeology thing, and he was talking about, what did he say that I said was dumb for an archaeologist? I think it was when we were talking about, nobody could understand what these motivations were. So I think Picard beams down there, and he's just making wild assumptions about the Iconians. And even if they're like educated guesses, he's really just like, oh, this must be true about them. And I'm like, dude, anybody that's trained in archaeology and studying that stuff would want to slow their roll and actually think about what they're saying. And
he ended up being right?
He did, as far as we know.
It's another one of those shortcut things, and I know, especially season 3 of the original, we got into a lot of where Kirk did this all the time just to be like, all right, we don't know how to fix this episode, or whoever was writing the episode was like, you know what, I don't know how to figure this out, and I know I only have 48 minutes, so I'm going to smush this down. But yeah, I agree with you.
And then that stuff continued because he walked through the gateway onto the Romulan ship. Totally got that. I thought that was cool and interesting, and they could have done something with it, and then they didn't. And he never even tried to save the Romulans while he was there. And then they go back to the Enterprise, and he's like, okay, let's go home. And Riker's like, hey, let me, tell the Romulans how to fix themselves first. And Picard's like, oh, okay, sure, go ahead.
That's what I had that thought too. I was like, man, I felt like they should have been rushing to help those guys rather than like, good luck, sorry.
Yeah.
I had that same reaction because, they were, as an accurate term, brothers in arms. They were both having the same issues. And, so it made sense that they were hostile under those circumstances. And I don't remember, did the Romulans blow up or do we not know?
We don't know, but I would assume they didn't. It sure sounded like they were going to listen to Riker.
Yeah.
Okay. So they were going to be able to fix their self-destruct thing.
Yeah, I mean, I get I'm fine with them not explaining that the Romulans had developed trust because clearly the Romulans could see what was going on in the Enterprise, so it was just posturing on their part why they wouldn't listen. But it still felt like the Romulans were really poorly developed in this episode. Especially Sub-Commander Terrace.
Yeah, and I wrote that too. Yeah, and this will be no surprise to people who listen to this podcast. But I wrote down, good to see the Romulans. She's no Joanna Linville, but she wasn't given anything to do, really.
No, that character was just blah. And I don't think it was the actress's fault. I wish they would have given her something. Carolyn Seymour is the actress that played Sub-Commander Terrace, and she's best known for playing an Elder God in Mortal Kombat Annihilation, the movie Congo, and the movie The Ruling Class. She's got 114 credits. British actress.
Only 114?
Yeah, only 114. She does a lot of video game work. It looks like Mass Effect 2, Mass Effect 3, Gears 5.
A lot of Star Wars video games, yep.
Knights of the Old Republic.
Mm-hmm.
Jedi Knight 2. Yeah, she does. So...
Yeah, I was generally underwhelmed by the Romulans, and this begins to explain why whenever I'm like, I love the Romulans, you're like, okay.
So she's actually in 3 episodes of The Next Generation. She will be in another episode as Commander Torith, who is also a Romulan.
Okay.
Called Face the Enemy in about 4 years. I'm looking at the picture right now, and that's Deanna Troi. I did think she looked like Deanna Troi as a Romulan. The other episode she's in, we're going to see Deanna Troi as a Romulan. That makes sense there.
Okay.
And then she's also in an episode in between that called First Contact. So they invited her back a couple of times on Next Gen.
Okay.
She was also in 2 episodes of Star Trek Voyager as Mrs. Templeton.
I
don't remember who Mrs. Templeton is. I'm going to guess it's a holodeck character, but we'll find out.
I would say it was Mr. Templeton's wife. But
oh, Keith.
So there are 2 things I wanted to make sure I got in here. One, way back at the beginning, I was kind of disappointed they didn't do like a little, when the captain said, I want answers for the meeting in an hour. Mm-hmm. I'm disappointed they didn't show a 1 hour later title before they went to the, they just cut right to the meeting. Anyway.
My reaction was an hour. How about right now?
Well, he had to be reasonable and give them time to investigate, I
suppose. Yeah.
But the other thing, and I'm surprised this hasn't come up yet, what I wanted to know is whether or not that space window, or the portals they were looking through, if those were anything like what we saw in the original series. I can't remember.
Yes.
Guardian of the Edge of Forever?
Well, there's that, and then I wrote down all your yesterdays because it was very much like that, or all our yesterdays, where they had the library where you put the disc in and then you zip to that place.
Yeah,
that's the way I thought, Keith. That's the one I think you're thinking of, where Spock and McCoy end up going back to the Ice Age on the planet, and
where Mr.
Kirk ends up in the
was.
1700s. Mr. Atos, exactly. Yep.
Yes, that one, and I think the animated series was the other one we saw that did something like that with the.
I think that was the Say of the Edge of Forever again. I think it was the Guardian of Forever again.
Oh yeah.
They brought it back in the animated series.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
But-
for some reason, I always thought the Guardian of Forever was Iconian, and maybe I got that from a novel or something, because I just went to Memory Alpha, and there's no mention of the Guardian of Forever being Iconian. It just says it's an unknown race.
But it certainly seems possible, doesn't it? Somebody should
Yeah.
make the connection.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, so.
Fashion?
Fashion.
I thought the Romulan uniforms were as badly tailored as their plot.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Again, very underwhelming.
I mean, these people are supposed to be super efficient, and they can't even make a uniform that fits.
Again, I know I'm the TOS guy here. Balance of Terror, these great Centurion uniforms and the helmets, and then Joanne Linville, amazing. And then these are just bleh.
And they're going to keep these uniforms for at least the remainder of Next Gen and DS9, I believe.
Very disappointing. While we're talking about past references, I should have brought this up earlier. When both ships are kind of getting into that, like, oh, it's a tactical thing and blah blah blah, and well, what do they have going on? And then once the Enterprise realizes, oh, they're having the same problem as us, it's kind of a Kobayashi Maru kind of a sauce for the goose, because they're both having those same issues and kind of guessing things. So I kind of like that. And anytime you borrow from Rathacon, unless you're into darkness, I like it. So I thought that was cool. Also, I started watching Angie Tribeca again the other night, and there's an episode where one of the characters is Kobayashi Maru. So that also stuck with me. But so I thought that the rest of the Ryman aspect was just okay, but I thought that part was cool, because you got into Balance of Terror, Rathacon kind of gamesmanship between the two ships. So I did like that.
Is your alternate episode just Balance of Terror?
I started with the Enterprise incident, then I went to Balance of Terror, but then I thought this, which is, so if the Yamato, actually this may end up being the same answer. Let's say Yamato gets destroyed before the Enterprise gets there. They get the call like, oh hey, we're having an issue. They're on the way there, and then it explodes just as they get there, and then the Romulans show up. Does that change the whole? I mean, I think then you get Balance of Terror, because it's like, hey, we think you blew us up. No, we didn't, kind of a thing. And the Enterprise neither ship gets infected, because the ship's already been blown up. So that's my alternate episode, which is completely alternate, because you don't even get a Contagion. You just get Balance of Terror too.
I would have skipped the Contagion as well, and I think an alternate episode that would have intrigued me was a joint Romulan Federation archaeology expedition down to the planet.
Yes.
That would have been much cooler.
I am signed up for that.
Yeah, that's. I think that encapsulates some of the things that some of the directions they could have gone if they didn't have to rush through it, I guess.
And to build upon the other jokes the other points I've made about the inconsistency of behavior in this episode, Picard's like, okay, that base is destroyed, let's leave. What about the rest of the planet? The whole planet had Iconian ruins on it. I get that base was the only thing they found with power, but you're fine with just leaving the planet over to the Romulans after that base is destroyed? What if there was another base that just wasn't powered up and they turned it on,
Right. I mean, there's likely other gateways, places with those gateways and everything on the planet, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
I have a question. This is more of an IT thing, so we'll see. And so when the new program comes in and starts to try to take over, and this is me not understanding, and I guess it wouldn't have to go this way anyway, but I guess it could have been possible, and maybe this is another episode, that new program would actually improve the Enterprise's performance rather than cause problems.
That would be nice.
Yeah, it occurred. Well, so the thing is, they probably made this protocol program to go and find new systems and explore. It could be that it was too old, but it was also too advanced somehow, or too archaic, or didn't really think about the way it was going to be interacting. So its solution was to keep trying to learn the system and communicate by saying, here's the way I do things. How do you do things? Here's why, and if it could be, they probably wouldn't have thought of, or they probably wouldn't have anticipated how disruptive that could have been for the systems it would eventually encounter. And it's possible that if the Enterprise were like a more, I guess, passive or stationary system, something that didn't rely too heavily on like the warp reactor, it could have had time to go through and figure those things out, and maybe it could have improved it. Who knows? But or even if they weren't trying to fight it the entire time, something else could have happened differently.
Yeah, and I guess it's very Nomad and V'ger, where they're like, well, you don't work as well as me. You're out. I'm taking over, kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. That could have been that too.
Yep. One thing that I thought was interesting, well, they explored a couple of concepts that were kind of funny. Just the idea of, overall the concept of being too advanced for your own good. Mm-hmm. The idea of there are lots of things that technological advances have gotten us so accustomed to doing or not having to think about, like the idea of the splints. I mean, that's ridiculous, but at the same time, it's not that much different than, say, somebody not having a calculator to do something, and you just assume you're always going to have something like that available. Going back to the whole Pulaski thing with the use a splint. What's a splint? That's crazy. That's so barbaric. It's a joke they're throwing in there to make that point. The other thing, for the way they actually ended up solving the problem with the computer, which I thought was kind of funny, it's they're essentially doing like a Windows system restore.
I was going to say,
what they're describing was just.
I wrote when in doubt, reboot, right?
Yeah, but yeah, they're literally doing something that I don't know if something like that would come up in the future with a computer that advanced, or if they were even trained to do it. But the way that Geordi was talking about it, and of course, I'm not going to chalk this up to this. I understand that you haven't been regarding this as being an especially well-written episode, and I'm kind of seeing why. It's just his reaction to the way he was saying it was like something they wouldn't have ordinarily have thought to do. Mm-hmm. And again, I don't know. I don't think that's that implausible, but at the same time, it wasn't as advanced as they were making it sound. And it could be one of those other things where, it's having to go so old school with something simply because things are too advanced. I don't know.
Could they have beamed the ship's computer out and then traced it and then beamed it back in? It would have been back in its original shape.
They could do whatever the writers wanted them to do.
Right. Yeah, there's also that aspect. It's a shortcut. They're working through these things. How much the writers know about computers? How much do we expect the audience to know?
Again, I think they threw enough. It's kind of, we talked about, I think last week, Jimmy was like, I was willing to suspend my beliefs. Obviously, we're suspending our disbelief because we're in the future and all that stuff. But I was willing to take the leaps in this episode. It didn't make me love it, like you said, Jimmy, but I still was able to take those leaps. But this is another one that was like, okay, you can do that. All right. You gave me enough that I'll make that leap with you. But
and see, I disagree. I was not prepared to make the leap with them.
No.
The Iconian stuff was cool, and like I said, Geordi had a good episode, but there were just so many ridiculous things that didn't make sense about when the ships went where, and people acting out of character. This episode was not one of my favorites. And then we ended with that bad joke on the end with Picard and Riker. Normally I don't mind those so much. I thought this one was particularly bad.
I had to watch it a second time, and I think I laughed at it, but I was, because when I watched the first time, I thought, wait, did they wipe Riker? Did they wipe Picard's brain too? But so he forgot everything that happened before then. But I was like, oh, okay, he's making a joke. So I actually liked it, but I was confused on the first watch for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of Riker and Picard, they have that hey, this is one of many away team conversations we've had before, and I was like, all right, you guys. But I was like, you guys usually do a pretty good job. But I feel like last several episodes we've had a lot of, well, I'm going anyway, and this one was definitely one of those. Obviously, Picard's like, nope, I'm going. I like that. I think Geordi says it. He's like, we need an expert here, like a Maddox, which I thought was cool. They were referring to a character from a couple episodes ago and kind of keeping him in this universe and expanding and being like, okay, kind of reinforcing that, guess what? That guy was pretty good and is pretty good, and we could use him. My last note, Yeah, it was.
I hadn't caught it at the time.
Yeah, it was like in passing, because I stopped on that too and rewound and listened to it again. My other thing was, oh, sorry, Jim.
Let's say we won't see Maddox again until Star Trek Picard, but he's mentioned a number of times in Next Gen.
Yeah, which I think that's cool. Like we said, we always want more recent history rather than a reference to Sherlock Holmes or whatever. My last note is the Iconian computer voice. I felt like it was Magil Barrett, but I couldn't find any on Star Trek Wikia. They're like, we don't know who it is. It's uncredited. But I thought it was Magil putting on a little extra spin.
I don't know.
And that's all my notes.
Keith, any other notes?
I mean, there are things about it that I liked that were simply just the idea of them getting into other alien races. These are the kinds of things we don't really get to see very much. They were actually throwing out future history things. I think Stephen glossed over that just a moment ago. The things we always want them to actually do instead of like, again, going back to Sherlock Holmes for something, but instead things that haven't actually happened yet.
Well, also filling in past history with the Iconians that were around 200,000 years ago.
Right. But yes, doing something to add to the fictional universe of it, I guess, is what I thought was interesting. And yeah, I've had some time to think about just even the computer thing, and I'm kind of changing my mind on that. I would think that something that advanced, they would at least have some sort of that kind of basic precaution would persist. Well, I mean, to the extent that Geordi wouldn't have to do it as manually as he was describing. You could say that it's a mark of it being an especially advanced virus-like interaction, that he would have to do some sort of manual adjustment. But the system restore thing I'm talking about was just like a standard feature that happened where you could just roll it back to a certain calendar date, essentially. You would think that for something that advanced, it would just keep something like that on hand. He did mention that they had certain core files archived, and I presumably air-gapped away from everything else, which is how he's able to restore from it. Mm-hmm. The last thing, I guess, that I didn't mention was something that was just funny to me. Just when Picard went to leave his quarters and the door didn't quite work at first, he just kind of paused and looked at it and walked through anyway. I thought, was he thinking the same thing the audience is obviously thinking at that point?
Yeah.
Was he like, whatever, doesn't mean anything?
I thought he was going to get stuck in it like Jerry Lewis.
That'd be kind of, we don't know how strong those doors are, if they cut people in half or what. Right. I would think you would want to start walking around with like a couple of books or something. Just something to brace the sides of the door in case it shuts on you.
It's like some elevators, if you throw your arm in there, they'll bounce back. And other ones will close on your arm.
It depends on the movie. Yeah.
Let's get to the rankings then. Scale of 1 to 10, how annoying was Leslie this week?
I gave him a 1. I was okay with him.
I was kind of at a 2, probably for some of the reasons that Jimmy was hinting at for the conversation. It could have been worse, but I liked the way the interaction played, even though it was probably forced into it for that purpose of, let's give these tender moments to Picard, but.
Keith, I was going to 3, but you talked me into a 2 because you're right. They got into the moment. It was kind of nice and tender, even though it was annoying that they did it in the first place. So he averages a 1.7 this week. Steven already said Pulaski is his annoyance.
Yes.
Keith, who's your annoyance?
I'm surprised to say that I think it would be, maybe the Romulan commander.
That was going to be mine until I landed on Pulaski.
I'm going with Picard. He just made too many weird decisions that I don't think made sense. Like saying, we got to stay here till we fix the ship. Nope, let's go to Iconia. And then let's leave the Romulans to fend for themselves instead of telling them how to fix this.
Same old routine, I suppose.
Didn't seem very Picard to me. Did you find a crush of Star Trek?
I am sticking. This is against my type, but I am sticking with the Klingon over the Romulan here.
I agree. The Klingon was better than the Romulan.
Yeah.
Keith, are you going to stay with Dr. Solar?
Yeah. I thought that the commander was going to be interesting at first, and then it just kind of, as we were talking about, it didn't really make much use of the Romulans or enough of them to. Anyway, yeah, you know what I'm saying.
And I wish there were internet boards back then when this episode came out, because I would love to go back and see how disappointed everyone was that they're like, oh man, Rama Commander and it's a woman. This is going to be awesome. And then they're just so let down. Everybody that was like expecting a Joanne Linville experience like I was. But I've unfortunately the internet wasn't that big a deal yet. But I would love to go back and see how every Star Trek fan at the time was like, oh man, what a bummer. I was all excited. I thought, because I was feeling that way early on. And then I was like, nope. And again, part of that's the whole part of the episode, and we've talked about the neutral zone. Speaking of the neutral zone, the season one ender, how the Romulans so far are just kind of like, we need like a class B villain in here. We're not going to do much with them, but we just need them around. Which is again very different from the way the two episodes I love so much from TOS, Balance of Terror, and the Enterprise incident. And I think. And it's beginning to make more sense to me. Like I said, Jimmy, why you're like, I don't care about the Romulans. Give me the Klingons. And this is starting to become a trend, unfortunately, right now. But obviously I'll have Joanne Linville and Mark Leonard still very strong in the forefront of my mind. But yeah, these last two Romulan episodes have been, at least the Romulan parts of these episodes have been very disappointing.
So let's rank this episode here.
I guess the best place to start, because I feel like it's kind of a middle episode, but I know where Jimmy is. I think Jimmy's a lot lower, so probably somewhere. Yeah. I mean, however many episodes we're in, 12.
I was looking at the middle, even though I'm inclined to hope it goes a little lower. In Unnatural Selection is roughly the middle right now.
I know my reaction to that episode wasn't that great, so I would put them in the same class, but I know.
I thought that one made a lot more sense.
It probably did. And yeah, like I said, I think I enjoyed, and I was trying to put it into words. I liked the parts of this episode. So I think it was less than the sum of its parts, but I liked a lot of the parts, even though they didn't add up to.
Yeah, I think that's a good assessment.
That's a great way of putting it, yeah.
Below that is the outrageous Okana.
That's where I was thinking it's around there.
I would definitely put it below Okana, but that's my opinion.
What's the next one below that?
Loud as a Whisper.
Ooh. I mean, I think that's the zone.
That is definitely the zone.
You could put it above or below O'Connor, and I'd probably be okay with it.
I'll give you above the Schizoid Man, but that's about where I'm looking at, honestly.
And what was the one right above that?
Loud as a Whisper.
Right. Okay. Yeah. The Loud as a Whisper thing was actually pretty interesting. I think it's really comparable there. I think because they're similar because of the interesting concepts they have going there, potential for some breakthroughs into the universe, and they just kind of get rushed and they kind of fall through toward the end for some reason or another.
I propose it goes above Loud as a Whisper because that one did kind of fall apart, but below the outrageous Okana.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can accept that, especially as much as I know you didn't like it.
I liked the outrageous Okana. Yeah, this puts it as number 8 of 11 episodes this season so far. So towards the bottom.
Yeah.
Next week, we're not getting too much better. We're going to Royale. Just to spoil a little bit my opinion on that episode. The Royale is one I definitely remember very well. I think I watched it a bunch on VHS. Worf, Data, and Riker find themselves trapped in a recreation of a poorly written novel. So right there, the description there, they're giving themselves an out.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to save it for next week.
Yeah.
You have got to go watch that episode first, Keith.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Don't take it from your fuzzy memory of years ago.
Of
go
course.
get it fresh. Until then, let's try to live long.
And prosper. Same old routine, I suppose.
Don't get probed by any probes. It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?